So just got the PCBs all wired in nicely now, and kind of pleased that the only major mistake is not very major at all, in that basically what's happening with these PCBs is that we're taking all these header pins that are assigned and then telling them which one connects to which component for all these colorful cables, which you can see here. And basically in the code we just essentially left a little error, which was that we assigned, if you like, one to position 2 and 2 to position 1, and so the rotary encoders just need flipped around. So it's really trivial, and it was just something I probably forgot to tell Don when prototyping, so it's my fault, not Don's, I should clarify. But it's also just a nice time that when you're not firefighting and things are going wrong, you sort of have a little bit of time to reflect on the design. And one of the sort of small pet hates that I was having was that this thing is actually quite bright in the dark. So I realized that on the back of the board, there's actually this little tiny connector, which you might see these occasionally. And they're usually for sort of development engineering work, just so that they can go in and adjust diagnostics of the board. But I realized that it said next to it very helpfully LED, and so that's obviously relating to the screen and the brightness. So I actually find it quite annoying having bright lights on in my evening, because it just distracts me and I just want to listen to the music. So I just wired in a little toggle switch, which, as you can see here, it just flips it off. And I don't know whether you can pick that up, but essentially what this is this is where you get into the science of things, is that this screen, I think, is called transreflective, which means it reflects light ambiently to give the display its definition and its contrast. And so when you take off the backlight and the LED, it means essentially however bright it is in the room, the text will be a proportion of that. And so for me, this camera might not pick it up, but for me this is actually a really nice level of just legible. Obviously if we had more time and this wasn't just an MVP, you could do all sorts of things to make sure that there's like a brightness just as you would on sort of say like a tablet or things like this. But I think with a move away to sort of blue light in the evening, it's something that sort of is just nice to fix at a very lo-fi level with a little toggle switch. But yeah, it's just one of those things that I think I will really enjoy seeing this go out to GitHub and be open sourced, because I'd be quite surprised if people didn't obviously make great suggestions of what we could do differently. So I feel like toggle switches for backlights and night mode, as I'm calling it, and of course different improvements with the user experience, I think these are all par for the course. So if anyone sort of ever wondered why do you do an open source rather than just make stone cold profit, I think it's fair to acknowledge this is quite a premium sort of, should we say, thing to play around with, just because of the nature of the components. And I think it's still in a stage of learning and creating discussion. And so for me, and I think I can't speak for DesignSpark, but I think it provokes a more interesting discussion than necessarily always just trying to focus on what is, the way that we can get a margin out of something, which is actually very hard to get a margin out of. And so I think in many ways what this does is it helps create other dialogues about what can companies do that is around sort of digital physical interactions. What is it we can do with the internet? How is it we can create things which are interactive? And I think it's sort of projects like this, certainly for me at least, really inform those journeys and those discussions. So I find it incredibly useful sometimes to do something which isn't constrained by the margin, and then actually you can go back to the drawing board with more clarity on what it is worth charging a lot of money and making a good margin off. So I think it's a funny old dance of experimentation and tests, and also then trying to apply some business acumen. So anyway, wasn't expecting to go off on that tangent, but basically I made a good night mode and the PCB works. Yay.